Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I will interview James Pearson. He's a life and mindset coach, and he's actually the life coach that inspired me in my journey. He will share all his life experience from working 25 years in financial services to reaching some of the lowest point in his life, such as going through depression, to becoming dead and finding the right path for his life, which is actually becoming a life and mindset coach. He will be sharing very useful tips with all of us, so let's stick to the end because I am sure you will appreciate this content and you will find much value in it. I am Luca and I am still studying to qualify as a professional life coach, and in this channel I talk about self-development and how we can create a life that is more authentic, meaningful and fulfilling. So thank you for being here and I hope you will enjoy this interview. Hi James, thank you so much for being on my channel and accepting to come here. I'm really glad because you have been the one who inspired me on my journey to study to become a life coach. So it really means a lot that you are here. But for those who don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Thank you.
Go on.
Thank you, and that's really humbling. Thank you very much for sharing that. So yeah, I'm James, and I'm a. It's funny. I've been toying with what am I? How do you label what you are? What's your job title? And I've settled on mental well-being coach and trainer. That's the title that resonates with me. It's been a 6-month journey to get to that name, and ask me again in 6 months, I may have changed it. But mental well-being coach and trainer is who I identify as my career. I'm a dad, a husband. I like to think I'm a bit of an athlete, although an old one.
What did you used to do?
Oh, I've always done training, soccer, a decent runner for a long time. It's just a big part of who I am, health and well-being, physical and mental. Amazing.
Starting from the very beginning, I know that you worked in financial services for almost 25 years.
Yeah.
So my question here is, what drew you to that path, and what's the reason why you decided to stay on that path for so long?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. One I've reflected on myself a lot.
Yeah.
When people talk about who's your ideal client, you've probably heard that phrase when you're building your own business. What's your niche? My ideal client is someone who's a high achiever, working in corporate, professional services. Maybe midlife, sort of 35 to 55, who've got hidden struggles. And what does that mean? Stress, overwhelm, just hidden challenges, but they don't show it at work, and why? Because that's my story. I look back on, and it's easy in retrospect, but I got into financial services chasing status, if I'm honest. I knew you could make good money. And at 18, 20 years old, making as much money as possible seems like the most important thing. Yeah. And so, I came to Australia. I worked in recruitment for a couple of years. So when I went to uni, I studied economics and politics and came out here in 2000, which is 25 years ago, wow.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I came out on holiday, backpacking, so I don't know how you came out here, but it's a bit of a
almost in the same way. Working holiday visa.
Exactly. So a bit of a rite of passage, the British backpacker coming to Australia when you finish uni before you go back and get
a gap year.
Yeah, exactly. Before you go back and get a real job, And I came out here with an Australian girl. She's from Queensland, but has had some family in Sydney. The Olympics were here in that August in 2000, so it just was a great place to come. Yeah. And I was here for a few months, and there's another story there around that relationship that didn't quite work out, let's say. And if I'd have had the money, I would have gone back. I would have gone back then, but I didn't have the money, and so I ended up getting a temporary job in a contract data entry role. I've lived in Sydney most of my life now. Yeah. So, I'm from England. I lived in Leeds for 10, 11 years. I lived in a place called Newcastle for 4 or 5 years. So I feel like I've lived in a few places. But yeah, Leeds is where my formative years were. So that's sort of where I say I'm from. And Yeah, and so yeah, so I had a temp job in recruitment, some contracted data entry, and did that as part of my working holiday visa to earn some money. And as I recall it, it was so I could earn enough money to go back.
Yeah.
And then, a couple of months later, started earning
What went wrong?
What went wrong?
Yeah, that you decided to stay.
Well, exactly. I started earning some money, and I'd never had a full-time job before. I'd just had part-time jobs in England while I was studying. So, you start to earn a bit of money, which has a different feeling to it. And, you're hanging out on a weekend on Coogee Beach or Bondi Beach and starting to enjoy the single life, because my girlfriend and I had split up that I came out with, and it's just made some friends in recruitment, really sort of... I got a bit of a nickname, Friday Night James, which is probably not for this podcast, but I just
but you can talk about your journey and how you evolved. So,
but no, I just made some really great friends, other Brits. At that time, a lot of people in recruitment were British. It was a bit of a rite of passage. You come here, do some recruitment, and suddenly you're in a job, you're enjoying it, and then time passes, and then you're applying for permanent residency, and once I got my permanent residency, I was like, I wanted to get into financial services. I felt that that's where the money was.
And it's definitely a remunerative sector.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, as I look back, I earned a lot of money in recruitment at like 22, 23 years old. Like, it took me a long time to get back to that level of money again, because it was very commission based, and I was quite competent at it. And so I was earning quite a lot of commission. Base salary was not great, but I was earning a lot of commission. But again, I laugh, and I didn't like the status, the ego of, like recruitment used to get put into that bucket of like a used car salesman. Oh, you're a recruiter. And again, I wasn't sure enough and certain enough in myself back then to just own that position that, hey, I'm a recruiter, I'm good at it, it's remunerating me well, etc. And like, my ego got in the way. I had this dream since I was a late teenager that I was going to work in finance, whatever that means. And so I sort of went back to it, and I had to sort of start again after a few years in recruitment, where I'd become an office manager and earned quite a lot of money, and I started from scratch again. I read something the other day about the different generations and how many careers they have through their life, and it seems to be the older you are, from a different generation being older, you might have 1 or 2 careers, and then sort of 20-year-olds now, they're expecting to have 5, 10 careers. I was in recruitment. And then even in financial services, I started off on the sell side, so stockbroking, and financial planning, where you're selling to clients. And then I moved to the buy side, where I was the client, and I was a fund manager and an analyst. So even there, 2 or 3 careers within financial services.
Different roles.
Yeah, exactly, and very different skill sets in some ways. And then the last 10 years, I worked in something called responsible investing, and that was quite a pivotal part of my life, the shift from, let's call it, money management into responsible investment.
So like is it something ESG related?
Exactly. Like, because that career of stockbroking and funds management fundamentally wasn't who I am, which I knew deep down, if I look back, there was clues there. It was a real challenge for me. Like, I was competent at it, but it was a real grind and a real effort. If I knew what I knew now, there's no way I would have done it. But I had to go on that journey and learn those lessons, right? Which have served me, because I'm helping other people, right? Find their purpose a bit earlier in their life. Yeah.
Exactly. And so during that journey, during those 25 years, when was the first time that you approached coaching or self-development?
So I mean, the mind plays tricks on you, right? So, but looking back, like the fork in the... So our daughter is 10. And so I know that around that first 6 months of her life was my lowest point mental health wise, because I guess if you have a life that's full and then you throw in a newborn baby, it makes it fuller, less sleep, more money pressures. You have a partner who's going through a lot because they're a first-time mum. So that was, I would say, a lowest mental health point for me. And so that was a fork in the road, because I know that was as low as I got, and I had to do something different. And at that point, I wasn't thinking about coaching or anything. It was just about myself. I'd had a certain mental health pattern since my teens that I didn't realize was any different to any other human being. I just thought it was the norm, that you went through ups and downs, and sometimes thought about stepping in front of trains at Wynyard and things. Like, I just thought everyone else thought the same thing, but no one really spoke about it.
While you were saying that, I was smiling because I thought that when you had your first daughter, you experienced the male version of the postpartum depression.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
of course, there are two things completely different, but it still took a toll on you.
Definitely. It was definitely the sort of straw that, like, I say to friends now who are having babies, like, if you've got a pie chart of your life between work, your relationship, your mates, watching TV, going to the gym, like, you break down your life into a pie chart of time. When you have a baby, the circle doesn't get any bigger. Some things have to be taken out.
How do you manage that?
And if you don't take things out, there's going to be consequences to that. And I think I was just trying to fit the baby into the pie and do everything exactly the same, and that clearly led to a bit of a bursting point, to sort of use that analogy. So that was when I set off on my, let's call it, my alternative self-mastery journey. So prior to that, I'd just sort of been pushing through, knuckling down, all the stereotypical approaches to managing your mental health, and then at, let's call it, troughs and low times, then I'd sort of see a traditional therapist or a counsellor to help me. And that was helpful.
And how old were you at that time?
I mean, I think I saw my first counsellor when I was at uni, so that would have been about 18, and then saw them on and off over the next sort of 20 years. But in retrospect, they were helpful, but they didn't really fix anything, to use that term, you know, and so I ended up, on an alternate path. And that's led to me where I am today, which is, my mental well-being is as great as it ever has been. No suicidal ideation for the best part of a decade. Like, I just have a different approach to mental health than I knew back then. And maybe 5 years ago, as I was learning this for self, I realized I wanted to then help others, and that's sort of when I pivoted to the coaching about 5 years ago.
So is it when you decided to take a definitive step out of your previous career in financial services?
It was like that. Like, if someone had said to me when I was 20, 25, 30, if you could wave a magic wand and money was no object, what would you be? And I would have said a teacher every single time. Like, I've always wanted to be a teacher.
Teacher of what?
Well, even then I didn't know. I thought it was just a teacher, primary school teacher, high school. But I just but there's no money in it. So I just kept dismissing that. And then, as it says, you start on this self-mastery, mental well-being journey, and you learn more about yourself. I started to embrace that, as I learned this. And coaching, is a form of teaching. You work with clients, you're teaching them, helping them.
There is rapport,
It's totally a lot of rapport. You're taking knowledge that you have that others don't, and helping to bring them on that journey. And so when I acknowledged in myself 6 or 7 years ago that actually I love teaching, and what's a way that I can fulfill that desire to teach in an area that I have a lot of passion around, which is human behavior, it just started to come together. And I never had a vision of where it would lead to, other than I just wanted to fulfill that need and drive to learn more about why humans do what they do and help people with their mental health. And so that led to learning about it formally, and then starting to do coaching just as a bit of a side hustle, really. That was about 5 years ago, and here we are today.
And that was already a huge realization.
Huge.
I think many people are just stuck in their daily habits and path and career, just because that's where they are, that's how much they earn, and they have certain commitments that they can't miss.
So you're 100% correct. And that was a challenge for me, because I was a primary income earner, Sydney mortgage, 2 children. I had a job in financial services that remunerated really well, and it was a job that I really enjoyed. I had a team that I enjoyed. I'd managed to craft a job that met a lot of the things I really value and enjoy. So I sort of managed to shape a life that was meeting many different needs of mine around my family and my education, and the coaching was complementing that. So it was great. And what was the kick up the sort of backside to go from doing it as a side hustle to the main income was my role was made redundant 6 months ago. And I'd been at the organisation for 15 years and in a job I loved for 10 years. So,
And how did you take it?
well,
Like mentally?
yeah, so it was, I'd like to think in some ways it was a manifestation.
Yeah.
You know, I think my mind was also always the last few years on how can I do more coaching and still be present with my family and still do a 50, 60 hour a week corporate job. So it was in the background. So in some ways, you know, I had a strategy as I look back. I grew a team around me. I helped educate other parts of the business. So in some ways, through my behaviors in the role, it sort of gave my boss permission to make my role redundant, because it's like I'd upskilled those around me that I wasn't needed as much. So in the end, as much as it was...
as if you created the causes of
yeah,
that,
yeah,
because
exactly,
you wanted.
yeah, absolutely, exactly. And it was a gift for me because it's allowed me to focus on my coaching full time. And I think that, you know, there's an initial shock. Like I remember calling my wife when the reality of it was going to happen, and I was just crying. I was like, I'd worked for the same company 15 years, and so there's an identity of like, whoa, you know, what will I do now, and what does it all mean?
Have you been 15 years with the same company?
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It's a lot, right?
It's like part of your pie chart, a big part.
Huge part, and I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of social capital there. I'd done a lot of jobs there, some real good friends there. So there was like a mourning or a grief to it, definitely. But also what a gift as well that it's given me this opportunity to start focusing on my coaching, because, you know, of getting a redundancy payment that bought me some time to work out what do I do next. And here we are 6-7 months later, you know.
Yeah, still alive.
Yeah,
pretty well off.
I made it. Yeah, no. So it's great. It's been an interesting journey for me. But yeah, that's going back to who was I 10, 20 years ago. You know, high achiever as in driven, somebody who was going through hidden struggles around depression and mental well-being and not really talking about it to anybody, and not knowing another way. Like I've had clients say to me, I can't see a way through. Like they're in a job, they feel trapped financially, they've got kids, like as you described before, they can't see a way through. And that's how I felt. And when you can't see a way through, that can really impact how you feel, right?
Yeah, it's hard, it's obscure, and
yeah, totally.
It can be depressing.
Yeah, very much so. And so that's what I would endeavour to help others on, you know, take them on that journey if that's where they want to go.
And since you openly shared that you went through depression and suicidal ideas, and how do you think that has changed you, like in the person that you are today, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think that what I've realised is, you know, I put a post on LinkedIn when I left my previous role, and as people traditionally do when they leave a role, it's like a thank you, etc., etc. But I also was open publicly for the first time about my depression and mental health challenges.
Did you disclose that in that post?
Yeah, I did, and so.
That's brave. That's brave.
Well, yeah,
courage.
I mean, so some people at work knew, because I'd raised some money for charity at work, and so I'd use my story and journey as a reason I was trying to raise awareness of men's mental health, and some of my friends and family knew, but I've got quite a large network of people from living in different countries and playing soccer and having different jobs, so a lot of people didn't know, and the response was humbling, but also that feedback of like, I would never have picked it. And that just reminded me...
You seem great.
Exactly, and that was the feedback that you get, and that just shows you how easy it is to hide, and just remind you and anyone listening as to, you don't know what someone's going through. And so what I've seen my story now is as a way to just lead and open the conversation for others to have that openness and vulnerability, you know, and because, you know, sometimes in generalizing financial services and things like that, it can be a little bit of a dog-eat-dog world and a lot about facades and masks and image. But I like to think that I had a relatively successful last 10 years, and yet that information was still known about me. So I don't perceive it impacted my career by being open about it, you know, with people. But yeah, it was humbling to get that response, and for people to just realize that what you think you know about people may not be the truth of what's really happening for them, especially in here.
I think we keep forgetting that every day.
Yeah.
I mean,
Great.
even when we remember that, but still, like a couple of days later, you just go back to your mental constraints, and you no longer remember that everyone has their own journey, their own struggles, and you may not really know what someone is going through in his life or has gone through.
No,
Previously.
absolutely. And none of that should define us or label us or hold us back. I think we're all human beings, and human connection comes when there's openness. That's when the real connection comes.
I agree.
So, being open enough and certain in self enough that you can share how you're feeling and your experiences, I think can help others. Well, that's my belief anyway.
I totally agree. I have never experienced something that severe, but the fact that I came out a few years ago, and I was 23 years old, so I had already built, my life, the idea of Luca, the public image of Luca, and so coming out with family, friends, people, it was scary, it took courage, but also it made me get closer to the people that really loved me and still love me nowadays. Beautiful. So all the others have been left behind, but because that's what it was meant to be, because evidently they were not worth it.
That's a great attitude to have. I wish I'd have had that certainty and confidence just to be totally open about my challenges or things that I thought people might judge me about, when I was in my early 20s, as opposed to sort of waiting until my 30s to be open about these things beyond sort of my immediate family and friends. It's inspiring because, the fundamental core belief I have is that on a scale of not being yourself through to being yourself, and what I mean by being yourself is being yourself publicly without any masks, just open and honest. The correlation between not being yourself and being yourself is sort of directly linked to your own mental well-being, meaning that the more you can be open and true to who you are, the better your mental well-being will be. That's sort of a core belief of mine. And when you've got the masks and the layers and the images on, that's draining and tiring, and it has to have a consequence somewhere across your life in terms of symptoms, whether that's mental, physical, and
or addictions, like smoke, cigarettes, alcohol, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's sort of a bit of a mission of mine to help people just be authentic, not saying it's better than the other way, but that's just how I believe that we can operate in our most energetic, mentally well place.
No, and I totally agree. You mentioned what was your definition of success at the beginning, so like status, money, which I think is a trap that we all fall in, especially at the very beginning of our career, but also when you reach a point where you think there is no going back. And so how has your definition of success evolved over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if it's human beings, I don't know if it's society, certain cultures, however, that, let's call it materialism of having money and what money can bring you can be a driver for many people, and it definitely was for me for a long time. I mean, there's a base level of sustenance that we all require, and in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs or something, that sort of survival, security and food and like that goes without saying. We all need to earn,
especially in cities like Sydney, London, Milan,
exactly.
or wherever.
Exactly. So, there's an element of that can lead to a base layer to provide you then the freedom to do maybe what it is that you really want to do. If you were to ask me now what I would define success for me, it's just that authenticity, like being able to be who you want to be and make the choices you want to be without any fear of judgment, without fear of, if I do that, what will people say? So I won't do it. It's like, as far as I'm aware, we have one go at this life, and so to not really follow our intuition, our dreams, what it is we really want to do, would seem like a bit of a disservice to the opportunity we've got to be here, which I know can seem quite trite and cliche, but I've been fortunate enough the last So when you work in ESG and sustainability, you meet a lot of people in finance that have got a more purpose-led approach to finance. They have a mission, a purpose of raising money for green energy or social housing. Like, it's that intersection of finance but doing good and making a difference, and the energy is different. And then in coaching, you meet a lot of coaches who are doing it because there's a mission there they want to achieve. My mission is helping people, take them from where I was to help them move forward. So you have a different energy and purpose around you, and I believe everyone's got that thing in them. It's just being suppressed or buried, or they don't believe that it's possible, or there's limitations around themselves that they've placed on it. So to me, success is identifying that thing and then moving towards it.
And being authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that there are some people who truly enjoy like working in financial
Totally.
services, or particularly in the ESG sector,
or
whatever.
Yeah.
I guess the problem is that many people are stuck in that sector because they don't see any other viable alternative.
Yeah, I think, I've met many people who are really driven in professional services, financial services, and clearly it's quite mission aligned for them.
It's their drive.
Yeah, that's what they love, and whether that's the money or the status, or maybe they just really just love the challenge of the market or managing risk. Like, what I'm talking about here is those that know that that's not really them, but they've sort of fell into it for other reasons, like I did, and then don't feel like they can get out. And that's when you can have that spiral then of feeling trapped or stuck. But yeah, no judgment on anyone for the choices they make. But if someone's in a career or a relationship that they know deep down they don't want to be in, but they're doing it anyway, pushing through, grinding through for whatever reason, I believe that will have physical and or mental ramifications immediately and over time, and they can compound.
So to you, the secret for success is being authentic and trying to follow that authentic image that you discovered of yourself.
And it's a journey, right? Which sounds cliche, but it's very challenging as a human being with a lizard brain, amygdala, to be authentic in every given moment. But staying as close to that authenticity as you can, for me, is where you'll find the most energy and happiness to use it. And it's not what we get taught, right? It's not what we teach our children. I mean, what I've really enjoyed the last few years is this.
So what are you teaching your children?
Exactly. It's a really interesting question, but I was just going to say the authentic leadership. That's a phrase that gets thrown around more the last few years, and I like that a leader is someone who's authentic, whereas traditionally sometimes a leader is someone who's like can push through and works long hours and leads by example, and all of these sort of traits that are a little bit generalized. And actually, I think I heard a lady once say, just good leadership is just leading from in here, being yourself, and I like that. I think you can be a great leader with lots of different styles of personality, as opposed to pretending to be a certain way.
I love that. So coming to the present,
yes,
as you said, you define yourself as a mental well-being coach.
Yes.
So you help people going through their struggles, identifying and achieving their goals.
Yes.
And so what do you think are the 3 most common struggles that people face nowadays?
Well, I think that we can label it in different ways, and people will use various sort of softeners like imposter syndrome and burnout and things like that. But I think that all emotions, positive and negative emotions, are feedback to get us into our authenticity. And so I think the biggest challenge that I see many people who are my clients is the expectations that they have on self that are not from themselves, they're from others. So maybe it's society or friends or parents. They have an expectation of what they should be doing or where they should be at this point in their life. Or I've got friends who have done this and we went to uni together and so I should be in it. So it's just comparison to others. And comparison to others is futile, right? There's only one of you and you're unique and special in your own way. And so having certainty of self and what it is that you want to do and achieve is the goal in my mind. And when you're comparing and trying to keep up with others, that can lead to to real challenge. So I think comparison to others is one of the biggest problems that manifests in stress and burnout and overwhelm. Yeah.
So like social comparison, and also like accepting as yours desires and goals that other people project on you.
Yeah, totally. I think we all do it unconsciously. It's like, even as a parent, like, you want what's best for your kids.
Yeah.
But whose definition of best? Mine. I want best for my kids, but that's my definition of best, you know. And perhaps as they get older, they may have a different definition of best. But I've spent, 15, 18 years projecting my definition of best onto them, and that's hard. Like, I would say that 99%, and I'm really, it's probably more like 100 of the clients I see, there's a lot of hidden beliefs that are still driving them now from when they were children. And this is people who are 20, 30, 50, 60 years old. It's the responsibility of a parent is so huge on your children that, they spend a lot of their life trying to live up to the parents' expectations. Even though it may not be intentional from the parents, it doesn't matter. It's just how the mind evolves in those first 7 or 8 years. Kids just absorb everything, and the parents and other role models are just, so they just look up to them so much, and unknowingly to the parents, we're constantly putting expectations on our children. So,
even if you don't say that explicitly, but maybe
no,
from
totally
the way
not.
you
Just
behave.
from behaviour, the language you use, and the feedback you give. So there's nothing you can do about it. It's one thing I've learned, like, as a parent. Like, there's a little metaphor or story where you have twins, and the mum every morning would get up and go into one boy's room, get out the clothes for the day, school uniform, or long pants if it was cold, or on a weekend they've got soccer, get the soccer gear out, and do exactly the same for the other boy, every single day of their life. And then they're in some form of coaching later in life, and the first lad's like, oh, my mum was amazing, she did everything for me, I used to get up every single day and she was so predictive of how I'd feel, that I was comfortable, I had the right clothes. And then the other boy was like, my mum, she never gave me any independence. She just chose everything from me. So as a parent, you can have the best intentions, but you have no idea how your kids are going to interpret it. And so based on that, you just can't mess it up as a parent. I think if you just love your kids and you're just there for them, and they'll find their own way. But I think it's such an interesting part of our development as a child, and a relationship between parent and child.
And even as a parent, I think that you evolve over time. Like, I was having this conversation with a colleague a few days ago. She was like, when I was younger and I had to choose my own path, like what I had to study, I didn't want to receive any feedback from my parents, from my friends. So, like, she claims she decided what she authentically wanted to study.
Yes.
But now she has some nephews, and she's the opposite. But just because she loves them so much that she wants the best for them. So, same person, same mindset, but applied into different ways. Because one thing is when it comes to you, one thing is when it's come to those that you're looking after.
Yeah, no, totally. And the person I am now is not the person I was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 25 years ago. So what do I teach my children? They need to go on their own journey. Like, is it right for me to try and have them skip a step along the way because I think I've learned a bit more that I wish I knew when I was their age? But I wouldn't know what I know now if it wasn't for the journey I've been on. So it's one of the hardest things I think as a parent, is just to step out a little bit and just trust that this is their journey, and my job there is to support and challenge them along the way. But I can't predict how they're going to, like the mum and the clothes example, I can't predict how they're going to react. So it's sort of a bit futile if I endeavour to do that, because they could rebel or they could embrace. So I can't control that. So,
and actually I think this mindset can be useful to stop social comparison. Let's say if you're thinking about yourself and you think that everything you've been through was necessary to bring you where you are now.
Yes.
So you didn't study the wrong thing, or you didn't have the wrong first job, because if everything played a role to bring you where you are, then it was useful in a way, even if you are
Absolutely.
30, 35, 40 or 50.
Absolutely.
It's hard to accept maybe.
And that's one of the biggest challenges for people I find is they can regret things, not seeing the perfection in how things are and were, that actually when you look back, if you think about our timeline, we're here today in the present. You can work looking forward, so we can coach on strategy around setting a goal into the future and how you might achieve it. A lot of the coaching I do is backwards in terms of why do I feel the way I feel today? Where does that come from? Where's that belief? Why do you have that regret? You know, working on those things, because when you can work on those and see the beauty in it and how it's serving you, that clears the mind for going forward. So it's like getting rid of the baggage, let's call it.
You anticipated my question.
Oh,
because,
did I?
Yeah. No, but I mean, go for it, because I wanted to ask you, so what's unique about your approach? How do you help your clients without disclosing your secrets?
No, not at all. Listen,
how do you help your clients?
I'm happy to share anything. I mean, I like to think what's unique is me, you know, like there's only one of me
course,
with my lived experience. And so I think that brings a level of authenticity that I can relate to what someone's being on and done. I truly believe that how we feel now, and what I mean by that is our triggers, our negative emotions, are because of past experiences. And if they're still impacting us now, if we don't understand those past experiences and see how they're still serving us, we're going to keep repeating the patterns going forward. I spend a lot of time working with, because I had a client who, like a lot of people will come to you, if they don't understand exactly how I work, someone will refer them and they'll want to work on a strategy problem. So that's something from now going forward. So
in the future.
So I'm Luca, I'm struggling in recruitment. I'm struggling to get the right candidates into my company, or I've got some financial challenges in my business. Like, people will come with that sort of what I'll call a surface level problem. However, recruitment example, this individual was, as I explored it, the biggest challenge was they were recruiting the wrong candidates because they struggled to say no. They didn't want to reject the candidate. Now, that comes from somewhere. You don't just wake up one day fearing rejecting a candidate from a job. That comes from an experience somewhere. And if you can understand where that experience came from and work on that, the next time you'll be congruently able to say to a candidate, no, you're not the right for us, etc. So there's problems beneath the problem, and that's what I love doing. It's like there's a surface level problem, which is sort of how you have to advertise, like you advertise imposter syndrome. That's a surface level problem. There's a deeper problem there, and people aren't always ready or wanting to go there, so you have to build the trust and rapport, and sometimes maybe you just work on a little bit of surface level strategy, but the clue is in how people are. Like, the other example I give is public speaking.
Yeah. So
I enjoy public speaking, and I did Toastmasters years ago, so I know a few things. And
what is that?
Toastmasters is like a group training program where it teaches you how to speak publicly, and you get feedback, when to breathe, and eye contact, and how to tell stories, etc. And you can go there and learn the skills, the strategy. However, if you're going on stage and you're feeling anxious and nervous, that comes from somewhere. Because if you gave the same speech to your friends, so your mates, so let's say you've got a speech coming up and you practice in front of your mates, you won't feel that. Yeah. But if you get on a stage, you will. Like, it's the same speech, the same words, the same breathing, the same stories. Why the feeling? Why does it feel different? And that's because something's going on here that you're projecting into the moment on stage, a fear or a concern that you've got. Understanding what is that fear, and then when you understand what the fear is, you'll be able to trace it back to a previous event or situation, and then if you do some coaching around this event, which could have been when you were 5, it could have been when you were 20, who knows, it will change how you feel when you're giving that speech.
And are people able to identify like the cause, the event?
No, I would say that no. I'd say that's what the skill is in the coach, is being able to ask certain questions and identify these, I call it root cause or origin stories. If we're born with 2 fears, right? The fear of loud noise is a fear of falling. Any other fear is learned. through life and experiences. You know, we develop fears, and some fears are more rational than others. So, and we can carry them right through our lives. So when you're anxious about going on stage, there will be an origin fear, a root cause fear that I like to explore and work with. Those is how I enjoy working. What else makes me unique? Teaching. So I enjoy teaching. So I have a desire to take complex ideas and turn them into like high school level teaching. Because my view is, I don't know if Einstein said it, if you can't explain it to a 10-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. So I love the thirst for knowledge. However, I also know the effort and time it takes to understand that knowledge. And not everyone's got that amount of time. So if I can take the knowledge I've learned and simplify it so that people understand with stories and metaphors and examples, then I think that that's valuable to people. So I want to teach and coach. So not all coaches do that. Some coach just coach. They'll ask questions and answers, whereas I will teach whilst I'm coaching.
You want to give some value.
I would love to be able to teach people how to recognize their own symptoms and feelings so that they can self-coach essentially. And you know, I know where that comes from. We talk about past impacting the future. That comes from my experience going through therapy. They were helping me
on the moment.
In the moment, right, in the session, but if I wasn't there,
you didn't know what to do.
I didn't know what to do and things. So you know, my goal with my clients is that I work with them and teach them that they don't need to come back again after a period of time. They're not like dependent on me, unless they want to keep learning, unless they've got new things they want to work on. But I used to go to my therapist and I'd be talking about my parents every week for the best part of 20 years. So as useful as that was, it didn't stop me talking about my parents for 20 years. Whereas if someone comes with me, I want to work on them with those issues so that once they've worked through them, that it's done.
I guess it's also very subjective. Maybe what works with someone may not work with someone else.
Absolutely.
And maybe someone may react more positively to therapy, while someone may find much more benefits in coaching or hypnosis.
Absolutely. 100%. Like I've done hypnotherapy, NLP, the DiMartini method. I've got all these modalities.
Do you use these techniques with your clients?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, like I remember someone saying to me, like, if you want your car fixing, you don't care if they use a spanner or a screwdriver. Like the modality doesn't matter. It's like, can you fix my car?
As long as you get to the result.
I just want to get my car fixed, right? You know, and so these are great for me to use and blend together because it's about what your client believes. It's about what your client wants. And if you know, if they prefer hypnosis, then I will use a little bit more of that. If they want more of a discussion, I might use another technique or approach. That's my journey. Some people, therapy is awesome. Some people want to use medication to support their mental well-being. Each to their own. Like, I'm not here to judge anyone else. If there was one approach that worked, there'd be no mental health challenges and we'd all be using that one approach, right? There isn't. So you have to find the people out there that buy into what you do. I think that's sort of the duty of care I have with my clients, and the knowledge to teach and the lived experience. I sort of think the combination of them is what will attract people to work with me.
You went into very detail of your unique approach. So.
Did I?
Thank you. No, thank you.
I don't mind talking about myself, especially.
It was fascinating. It was fascinating because
you. Many
people may not get what coaching is, and you think it's just asking dumb questions or lighting some candles.
Exactly. And you know, Luca, I mean, I know you're looking at coaching yourself. Like, people have different expectations of what coaching is based on their own experiences or what others have told them, and me getting clear on what I do and ensuring there are no surprises, because coaching is about rapport and trust. And if they come thinking they're going to talk strategy and I start talking about the challenges they had with their parents, there can be a bit of a mismatch there. So it's really important for me to get clear on my message and what to expect. Otherwise, you're not going to retain clients.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's say you are someone who is conducting a normal, happy life, like happy on the surface, but deep down you feel a certain degree of dissatisfaction. I mean, there is something which is not correct, but you don't know what that is. And what are 3 questions that person could think of or could ask themselves to try to discover what's missing?
The first question so what I'm doing is now putting myself in my shoes, like what have I learned to do with myself? And whenever I feel an emotion, it's feedback to me. There's some things not right. There's some violation of an expectation of some form. So we all have our unique inner drivers, our hierarchy of values, the things that are important to us, and our expectations come from that. So if I have an expectation on my wife, on what I expect in our relationship, let's say I have an expectation that she's not hanging out with other men, drinking till 3 a.m. every night of the week. If she were to be doing that, I would feel an emotion.
Yeah.
Anger, pissed off, frustrated. The degree of emotion is going to give you an insight into how much a violation of your expectations has occurred. So I use that extreme example to just give it simplistically. That emotion's giving me feedback, right? I need to address that. Either change my expectations or have a conversation with her about those expectations and see if we can agree. So the first thing I do when I'm feeling emotions is, what expectation here is being violated? You know, what's my inner voice telling me? You know, so let's not suppress it, let's not ignore it. What is it telling me? And we know. I mean, I know you can have a coach probe and push and pick apart, but I also think deep down we sometimes know what the emotion's telling us, but we don't like what it's telling us. We don't like the truth. It's telling us that we don't want to work in that job anymore, or maybe this relationship's not right, or maybe I don't want to go on holiday to so-and-so, but I don't want to disappoint my family. Like, it's like we ignore the emotion and then make a conscious choice to do the opposite,
To ignore it.
for someone else. But actually, once you acknowledge the emotion and explore it, the emotion will disappear. And then you have choices to make, you know. Do I want to have the conversation with the wife, or do I just want to suppress and ignore it? That's a choice I get to make. But again, knowing that if you don't deal with it, it's going to keep popping up. And I would say the amplification of it gets louder the more you don't deal with it. And so that, in my mind, that's what your mental well-being is, right? If you've got frustration at home in your relationship because an expectation's not being met, at first you're just a bit peeved. And you go, I'll ignore that, it's not a big deal. And then it happens again, and you get a bit more, and it happens again. And you keep ignoring it because you're avoiding a conversation, maybe you're scared of a conversation, and it'll just get bigger and bigger and manifest in different ways until eventually you just explode.
Yeah. And I think, this is very true, and I think it may happen especially with very unpleasant emotions. Because let's say if we acknowledge that we are having a bad emotion, but it's something that we can easily fix, you know. Let's say I'm pissed off because my flatmate, you know, keeps the lights on at midnight. I mean, that's something pretty easy to deal with. But if you have a bigger realization, like you are deep down frustrated because you don't enjoy what you do, or you no longer love your partner or whatever, I mean, that's something very hard to deal with. And so maybe that's why ignoring and try to shut everything down, maybe you think maybe easier, but then, as you said, it just has bigger and worse consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in that example, it can be a compounding effect. The ball of inside negative emotion just gets bigger and bigger, right? You know, you can have an individual event which may create fury or anger, but sometimes it's the little ones, the death by 1,000 cuts that you've ignored because it's not a big deal. They can become a big deal over time. And so again, it's just about acknowledging them. It doesn't mean you have to follow through on exactly what it's telling you, but it's just not suppressing it. And if the truth of the emotion is that it's something that you need to take action on, that's when you put a strategy in place. Because when you have a strategy, overwhelm feels less. So, you know, if you're getting the sense that your job is something that's really not aligned with what you want to do, you can just keep ignoring it, pushing through. I'll toughen up, it'll be right in the future, but it'll keep coming back. It might go for a week, a month, 6 months, but it'll keep coming back until you get the message, and it'll come back bigger. But once you acknowledge it and you say, okay, I'm going to put a strategy in place. Over the next 5 years, I'm going to train, I'm going to do something on the side. When you have a strategy in place, the emotion dissipates because you realize that you have a plan and that you can see light at the end of the tunnel.
And you have power over your life.
I mean, I didn't realize that until I became a dad, because suddenly I'd always set goals like 3-month goals, 6-month SMART goals. When I became a parent, I suddenly realized I wanted to see my daughter get married. I wanted to see my grandkids. So suddenly my goals went from 3 to 6 months to 10, 20, 30 years, right?
Yeah.
You can achieve anything on a 5, 10, 20 year, 30 year basis. Anything. You could learn anything from scratch, be a doctor, expert guitarist, anything's possible. And so when you extend your time frames a little bit and be realistic, because I think that's something else that we as humans can tend to be is unrealistic. You know, that you have to be realistic. Can you punt around in cryptocurrency and become a multimillionaire overnight? Possibly.
Maybe.
Low probability. Realism exists when you start playing in the middle of the bell curve. What's realistic? What's possible? Now, if you start putting 10, 15% of your salary away every month into some sort of equity ETF, you can compound that, and you know on a 10, 15, 20-year basis, that's going to equal X amount of money. You know, once you put realistic strategies in place, then things feel, let's call it, achievable. When it's unrealistic, when you're trying to be an expert in something new in 6 months, or just change careers and replicate the exact salary in 12 months, is it possible? Is it probable?
I think it's less probable than the other scenario.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's realism, and people don't want to hear realism because people want the fantasy that the get rich quick scheme, as an example, you know, or finding the one just around the corner. Like, strategies are really important, and realism. It doesn't mean that you can't be inspired and have goals, but, you know, put the strategy in place, and if it happens sooner, brilliant, you know. But I've lost track of how many people. Like, I'll have a group program that will teach people and help people on their mental well-being journey, and I say, no quick fixes, no hacks. You know, I've spent $150,000 on training, notwithstanding hotels and time off work. So my family and I have spent a lot of money on my development the last 10 years, and it's still ongoing. If someone's telling you that they can fix your mental health in 6 weeks on this amazing course, your BS radar goes off. But people can do that back to back to back for 3 or 4 years, trying the next quick fix, as opposed to if at the beginning they just put a more realistic strategy in place. Where would they be in that same time, rather than chasing the next quick fix? You know. So, but the quick fix sells.
It does.
You know, the quick fix sells. So that's why I'm only ever going to attract those people that have had enough of the quick fix, or are realistic to realize that, hey, there's things we can do to help manage your mental well-being in the short term, breathing, meditation. But to permanently improve it in the way that I've done, that's going to take some time, and that's okay. Because I plan to be here for the next 40 plus years, as I'm sure my clients do. So, you know, what's 3, 6, 9 months on that journey? I
remember someone saying that we tend to overestimate what we can achieve in the short term, while we tend to underestimate what we could achieve in the long term. Yeah,
that's a great saying. I think I heard that from Tony Robbins once, and it really landed with me. Because again, it's just being realistic.
Now I'm curious. So as a life coach, do you have any daily routine, daily practice, anything that you practice regularly to stay focused, connected to yourself, and grounded?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talk about tools that manage your mental health, and my goal is to help people master their mental health. However, within the mastery of mental health, there are tools and techniques and routines that I still use. And so let's take, for example, breathing or self-hypnosis or meditation. For me, those tools are to help me visualize, to help me get ready for my day, to help me get in a very centered place. When I was using those exact same things before I dealt with all the root cause and underlying problems with my mental well-being, they were just keeping me afloat. You know, so I'd meditate every day, but if I stopped meditating for a day or two, I'd regress. So I do use breathing. I go on my rebounder each morning. I do some stretching, very consistent with that, as my kids will tell you. I've got an infrared sauna that I use regularly. These are all things I've done for a long time, but they are part of a routine just to help me look forward, to visualize, to be grounded, centered, they're not there to just manage my daily mental well-being. Does that make sense? Because that nuance, because I know plenty of people who meditate, but they meditate every day because if they don't, they'll explode. It's not meditation to sort of just stop myself exploding. It's meditation more about just visualization and improving heart rate variability.
Yeah, so again, it's like shifting your mindset while doing that practice,
Yes.
which is not I'm doing it to remediate.
Exactly, that's
like
a great
to
way
fix
of putting
something.
it. Yes.
But it's to thrive
Yes.
and to keep looking forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, those, I mean, I love the breathing and meditating, even managing my mental well-being. Like if I hadn't have done that in the past, you know, I would have been in an even worse situation. But again, I don't never want it to be a crutch that people have to have. Like if they're using it as a crutch, as something that if they don't do, they're going to have, you know, their mental well-being is going to regress significantly, then I think there's deeper work that people can do. So, but I definitely, health is really important to me. I've always got a glass of water or a bottle of water with me, you know, hydrate, oxygenate. I get cold shower every day.
Do you?
Yeah. It's funny, I was saying it's been nearly 2 years now of cold showers every day, and it's really interesting.
You know what I heard about cold showers?
Go on.
That if you do them every day, your body get used to them, and so the shock is no longer the same.
Well,
so like every morning you should like launch a penny, whatever.
Yeah.
And depending on the results, you either get a cold shower or not, because your body doesn't expect that.
Interesting.
And so you get the shock if it's yes, and you don't if it's not.
You know what? That makes sense. And whoever said that clearly doesn't get a cold shower every day. Because there is not a day that I get in that cold shower that I want to.
It doesn't shock you.
There's not a day that I don't make a really gasp breathing noise, and the
Yeah.
kids wonder whether it's me or my wife in the shower. It's that high pitched.
He's dying.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's one of those things that I've read can really assist in various long-term health benefits, but it's a little bit of a leap of faith, right? Because I don't know if that's true or not. So part of my mindset now is it's just really me being in charge of my own mind. It's like, okay, I don't want to do it. And it's great to build resilience, to push through the hard thing that you don't want to do. Yeah. So every morning I never want to do it, and I do it. But never do I want to. You know, even thinking about it now, it's
I mean, I'm still in my comfort zone because I think I tried once,
Did you?
maybe some years ago, but of course it was awful and I felt terrible, and I was like, I can't resist to the point that this feels normal, so why bothering?
Yeah, I know. I do wonder if I'll get to like 80 and then the research will be like, all these people have got cold showers for 30 years, it's made no difference, and I'll be like, oh. But that being said, it was great in the blackout, because as my family was struggling to get clean when we had a blackout and power outage a few months ago, I was like, fine, it's like any normal day.
Business as usual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, those routines I find really helpful. Breathing and just the cold and hot exposure and regular exercise. They're important to me. I don't ground. I have friends who ground and get outside in nature. That's not something that I do regularly. I have gone through phases on and off of gratitude journals, and I can see the benefit in those. However, I've again not been disciplined enough to do them. So, but they can work as well for people. You can sleep a lot better once you've had that moment of relaxation and got into your heart. That can be really useful.
And I relate to this because, I mean, I love journaling, I love expressing gratitude, and I love affirmations.
Yes.
But there are periods when I think I don't feel like I need this. Yes. So like going through those affirmations or just sitting down and journaling feels unnecessary. I mean, I know it may sound pretentious, but that's how I feel. So I'm like, why bothering, sitting down and doing that, while today I feel like reading.
Yes.
Or going for a run, or having a very hot shower.
I hear you.
So I think it's another journey, and it keeps evolving. And, and maybe the following month I feel like, no, I really feel like sitting down and giving a written form to my thoughts because I need more clarity.
Yeah.
So,
and as I'm talking and as we're talking, like we give clues away around what's important to us in our language, and as I've said before, we all have our own unique inner drivers, the things that are really important to us, and quite clearly, if you listen to this back, which hopefully some people do, you will hear that I talk about my family, I talk about human behavior, I talk about health. that's what's authentic to me, these things, living in alignment with those. But somebody else may love eating pizza, they may love, playing video games, they may love,
financial freedom. I mean,
totally,
it's
like it,
legitimate.
100%. And it's all about, for me, authenticity is embracing what are the things that are important to you and doing those things, whatever they are, without judgment of self or fear of judgment from others. Like, imagine if we were all to do that, how that may change how people feel about themselves. I think the biggest, the biggest pandemic in my mind and the biggest symptoms that I see is people having low self-worth, low self-esteem. And that comes from not...
And why do you think that's...
Well, that just comes from not loving who you are. Like, I talk about the 3 stages of know yourself. So getting to know who you are, being yourself, so being the thing. So know who you are, be that, and then love yourself. And how can you love yourself if you don't know who you are? How can you love yourself if you're not being who you are? Because deep down when you're being someone else, when you've got your mask on, when you're not speaking your truth, you get those symptoms of feedback, it, and then that impacts your self-worth. Like, when you meet somebody who's fully congruent with who they are, there's not an element of doubt about them.
Like, you can feel the energy.
Exactly, and that's inspiring for others, and people want to follow people like that in all areas of life. It's not just coaching, but when you see someone inspired doing any job, people are inspired as a leader of a family. People are inspired as teachers. You see it when people are inspired and when they're being themselves. So that's I'm still on my journey of fully understanding who I am and being myself. I'm closer now than I was yesterday and 10 years ago, but still exploring all the time because we're complicated people, But
exactly.
I would love to have this conversation with 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I have this belief, and it may be incorrect, of the older you get, the more baggage you collect.
Yeah, which is true.
And the more baggage you collect, then obviously, and it's great because it means I have clients in their 40s, 50s and 60s. However, what if people can embrace who they are earlier in life? How would that change things?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I like to
have an optimistic point of view. I hope that the future generation will be much more self-aware and aware of how mental well-being is important.
Yeah.
So they will not find themselves in these severe situations where middle-aged people find themselves today.
Yeah, let's hope. I do have this fear around comparison, because to me comparison is one of the pitfalls, because once we start comparing to others we can feel less than, and that impacts their self-esteem, and so social media provides a platform where there's a lot of comparison.
Constant.
My daughter's sort of 10 now, and she keeps telling me how nice this person is on YouTube, and I'm like, you have no idea who this person is. There's a 30-second video, a 10-minute video. You have no idea what they're like when they're not on YouTube. So when you're only seeing one side of someone, it's very easy to compare yourself and feel less than, because they're always this, they're always that.
Yeah.
I'm not always this, I'm not always that. There must be something wrong with me, and so I sort of do encourage my children just to embrace both sides of who they are and love them for that. Because, the John DeMartini, who I follow, he likes to say, if I say to you, you always kind, never cruel, your BS meter goes off. If I say to you, are you always truthful, never lying, that's not true. You're always generous, never stingy, that's not true, right? Inside, it's not true. If I say you're always mean, never kind, always stingy, never generous, that's not true too. You're both. You can be kind, you can be mean, you can be generous, you can be we all have both sides. So embracing both sides is really important, not trying to deny half of ourselves because we think it's not good enough.
And I think the harsh truth is that you start judging yourself when you behave the opposite way you think you should. If you've been taught that being generous is good and being stingy is bad, that time that you behave in a stingy way, you don't accept yourself. I mean,
you get the feedback.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
get the self-judgment,
like,
you feel it.
You don't understand that so clearly, but deep down know, and you try to shut the feeling down.
Absolutely. So as a parent, I use this analogy, which I'm sure you can relate to. Both of my children can be little beep, and be angels. They've got both sides. They can be mean and kind and cruel and stingy and generous, everything, because they've got all behaviors, as we all do. Regardless of what they do or how they behave, I love my kids no matter what. No matter what, I will love them. And that's the same for all parents. You love your kids. So what if you translate that way of thinking to other human beings? What if you translate that to your intimate partner rather than trying to have them just be more of this and less of that? You know, you just accept them for both sides. I mean, you know, John DeMartini says, we all want to be loved for who we are.
Yeah.
And isn't that true, right? We don't want to be judged. We don't want to judge ourselves. We don't want to judge other people. What if we can just accept and love ourselves who we are and be accepted and loved for who we are? That's probably the greatest gift you can give somebody that you love, is just accepting both sides of them. Because they're a human being with their own priorities, their own lived experience and baggage.
Yeah. Like we're not right or wrong, black or white.
Totally.
But I think that's really powerful and beautiful. I mean, I would feel very empowered if I were you, you know, to like raise my children and letting them know I love you. Yeah, you can be little shits, or you can be amazing.
They still trigger the crap out of me sometimes, but that's the gift.
I'm sure they do.
I'm
sure they do. But yeah. So now we've come to the last part of the interview, which is the one that I love the most, and with my 5 signature questions.
Right, okay.
Actually, you are the first one that I'm asking this
time. Oh, am I? Well, it might become 4 if I don't answer them all
you
well.
will set the example for the people to come.
Okay.
So,
Brilliant.
Question number 1. If you could go back to your 25-year self with all the knowledge that you have now and give that guy one piece of advice, what would you tell him?
Just drop the mask. Just have the courage to drop the mask. Just be yourself and trust that that is enough. Trust that, you may lose friends, you may gain friends, you may change jobs, but trust that it'll work out. You know, I sort of have this belief like that the universe will conspire to support you the more you are yourself.
Authentic.
Authentic, yeah.
Question number 2. What is a big challenge or failure that in hindsight became a blessing?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because you know, a lot of the coaching work I've done is exploring the things that have happened in the past and understanding actually how they've served me. And so, because I think that's a real important part of any self-development work is shedding the story from the past of this went wrong, this was a problem, this was a trauma, because they can define and limit us going forward. As I said, past inflects the future. However, I think one of the shaping moments of my life is my mum and dad getting divorced, etc. So that experience and going through that experience, I went quite a few years without seeing my dad. At the time, it felt painful, and for a long time as I was growing up in my sort of 20s and 30s, I used to sort of felt I'd missed something, a father figure. I've done work around that, and I see how it served me, and it was all beautiful, but I realise now that I wouldn't be who I am today if that event hadn't occurred, and I like who I am right now. So seeing that perfection in it, rather than using it as a story to blame, which is how I used it for a long time, I think that would be the sort of moment I'd look back on and see the perfection in it now.
Right. Question number 3. What does a happy life look like to you today?
Happy life for me today really is me being able to be on my mission. So my highest inner drivers and values are my self-mastery and coaching, my family, my health. If I can design a life for myself that encapsulates all of that by being myself, that would be what I would consider an inspired life. That's the plan. I don't know the path to get there necessarily, but I have ideas and steps along the way. So that's it. I think if you're being yourself and aligning your decisions, actions with those things that are really important to you, which is different for everyone as we identified, then I think that's where the sort of the true centered, inspired life can exist. I don't use the word happy.
Why?
Because life, going back to realism, life will always have a blend of happiness and sadness. You know, this idea that you can avoid sadness is futile. There's always going to be events that occur that challenge our values and beliefs and our expectations that we're going to feel feedback, sadness about, and that's the same on happiness too. And if you actually spend a life just chasing one side, trying to be always kind, never cruel, trying to always be generous, never stingy, trying to always be happy, never sad.
It's another trap.
It's a trap. That's a great way of putting it. I felt that when you said it. It's a trap, and then you become disappointed. And there's something called the hedonic treadmill, which I may have mentioned before, or you might have heard about. But when you chase happiness, this person will make me happy. This new car, this new home. You know, how many times have people bought a new car and cruised around in it for a week, a month, a year? It'll make me happy. And then after a period of time, it's just another car. And then they're looking for the next thing to make them happy. You know, the balance of happiness and sadness is always going to exist. And the hedonic treadmill will always exist. So the thing that you think is going to make you happy will be temporary. And then it'll be the next thing and the next thing. And so then you can get frustrated because I can't get this happiness. But happiness,
the picture that you had in mind.
Exactly. But happiness comes from living in line with those highest drivers, you know, and in that place, you embrace the happiness and the sadness. My kids cause me both. But I embrace both sides of it because that's part of being a human being, right?
And you still feel accomplished, full.
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe I may decide to change my signature question. And I like this. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What's your vision for your future?
My vision of my future is to have a training and coaching business where I am teaching others in this philosophy in my journey and empowering others to improve their mental well-being and training others how I do it, maybe training other coaches how to do it. First step is training people to manage their own mental well-being, and then the second phase might be teaching them how to coach using the philosophies that I've learned and brought together, but in a balanced way. You know, ensuring I have time for my family, still, you know, I still training and exercising. So yeah, that would be right now, that would be the goal, to have my own business that's credible. You know, I don't want to take over the world or be the next Tony Robbins. I just want a business of loyal customers and clients and a reputation of someone who does a good job, you know, so. Yeah,
that's a beautiful vision.
Yeah, it sounds simple.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. When you say business, that's already complicated.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm learning a lot about business.
That's inspiring, but that's very inspiring. And the final question, if viewers could take away only one thing out of your interview today, what would you like it to be?
My email address, does that count? No,
we can leave that in the description box.
Teasing. I just, you know, you're good enough as who you are. Even though you may not see it through comparison and expectations, you are enough who you are right now. So just be that and trust that will be good enough, and the world will mold around you to embrace that. Don't pretend to be something you're not, because you know on the inside it's an act.
I love that. Again, it's beautiful, and it's a wonderful message to end the interview with.
Thank you.
Again, James, thank you so much
for our discussion. Did I talk too much, Luca?
No, you didn't. There are no rules yet.
Good.
So
you might have to bridge it into a few episodes.
No. It will be one long, huge episode. But again, thank you for all the value that you brought to my channel.
It's a privilege to come on, and it's really nice to do something face-to-face as well, not just over Zoom. So thank you for having me, and good luck on your journey, however that works out. And if I can help and support and challenge you along the way, then you know where I am. So.
Thank you very much.